I'm making my guest's favorite drink.
You picked a mojito, Vesper Martini.
The House of Balloons cocktail.
Nice and crisp.
Join me and some of the world's greatest writers.
Multi-award-winning author of 5 novels. Best-selling author of more than 20 books. A Pulitzer Prize among many other awards.
Welcome to Dedicated. I'm your host, Doug Brunt. Today we're with Grant Ginder. He has been a speechwriter in D.C. He's studied fiction writing under Colson Whitehead. He actually now teaches writing as well at his alma mater, NYU. And he's the author of 6 novels. One is The People We Hate at the Wedding, which was turned into a 2022 movie starring Kristen and Allison, Janney. And his latest is So Old, So Young. It's a terrific book. We're going to talk all about it. Grant, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we are going to have Negronis while we talk all about it.
Sounds good.
Which is what all the best writers drink.
Yeah. I'd like to think so.
Yeah. We've had a few orders for Negronis over the
Oh, yeah? Who
course
else?
of the show. Let's see. I think Chris Bojalian was a Negroni. Amor Tolls was a Negroni.
Okay. So I'm in good company.
You're in great company, yeah. They are in great company, I should say.
Thank you.
I really did. I love it. The dialogue is crisp and energetic. And there's an incredible inner monologue that's driving the dialogue. It was a really, really great, fun read, full of wisdom.
Thank you. It's like all of my neuroses on the page.
And I will, as I'm pouring this, we'll get started a little bit. I know you're from Laguna Beach.
I am. I grew up in Orange County with a brief stint in Northern California, and then back to Orange County. And then I did my undergrad at the University of Pennsylvania. So hence the Penn connection in the book. And haven't been back since then.
I know. I saw that. So like Laguna Beach, I sort of picture as like empty pools and skateboards, a little surfing in the 80s. Is that
absolutely?
Kind of how it was?
I mean, absolutely. Like perfect weather, a great place to grow up. But it was like one of those places to grow up where you like didn't realize it was great until you left, and in my case was like suffering through East Coast winters, being like, what the fuck have I done? And so it's kind of wild that I decided to stay out here.
I know. I was wondering about that. So you came east. Cheers.
Cheers.
To UPenn, which, as you say, for So Old, So Young, the latest, they're all graduates of UPenn.
They're all grads of Penn, correct.
But then you stayed east.
I did. It was like the end of my senior year of college. I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. And I was taking a class with Al Hunt, who...
Yes. Oh my gosh. He went to my high school.
Oh my God.
I mean,
Really?
he must be like 80 now, but the political
he's up there.
guy.
Mr. Judy Woodruff. And he suggested that I apply for a job as a communications assistant at the Center for American Progress, this think tank in DC that was started by John Podesta. And so I did. It was like the only job that I could get. But it ended up being this incredible gig. I'm still really close with a lot of people I worked with. And while I was there, so I started off as like a communications assistant. And I was a terrible assistant, like actually truly the worst assistant. Like at one point I was working for the woman who ran the communication shop. And I like booked her on the wrong flight one time. She like showed up for her flight at Reagan, but it was actually the out of Dulles. It was terrible, like absolutely terrible. I'm just like not a detail-oriented person, but we got along really well. And so it was like a classic example of like I failed up.
Yeah.
She was like, well, you're really bad at logistics, but you can write. And so why don't we see if you can write a speech? So I ended up being a speechwriter.
You failed into the speechwriting role? That's amazing. You're a horrible assistant.
Like literally the world's worst assistant.
So the speechwriting came after Penn, but before your NYU MFA.
Correct.
Okay.
So while I was speechwriting, speechwriting is the kind of job where there are times and periods during the year when you're like super busy, but like in the summer, like Washington like shuts down, right? Yeah. And so I wasn't doing a lot of writing, but it kind of coincided with me getting my heart broken for the first time. Like I had like my first boyfriend in DC and he dumped me and I was like, I'm never going to love again. I'm miserable. I don't want to be seen by the world. And so at that moment, I kind of like, I'd always read a lot. I really wanted to write fiction. I'd always been a writer in some way, shape, or form. And so I started writing a novel, and I literally Googled how many words are in a novel, and I was like, well, okay, so it's around like 80,000. So, okay,
so no fiction writing classes.
No fiction writing classes. I was a huge reader, always been a huge reader. And so I wrote the 80,000 words, and then I was like, all right, now what do I do? And so I Googled like how to publish a novel. And I was like, oh, I got to find an agent. So then I started Googling agents. I mean, it was really like an ad for Google, like how to write a book.
But inspirational is this what turned out to be? This is how it starts?
That is what turned out to be. This is how it starts, which I wrote, again, when I was like 24, which unless you're Zadie Smith, like no one should be writing a book when they're 24 years old. I unfortunately did, and it unfortunately got published. And now I'm on this like lifelong quest to find every copy of it and burn it.
You sound like Bogellian, by the way. He's like, I hate my debut novel.
I mean, it's like, so terrible. It's so terrible. But
by the way, though, it's a great title for the debut novel of a big career.
Like
this is how it starts. Right? I love that. Yeah.
I know. But the good news is that it got me my agent, who I'm still with to this day, and I think is the best in the business. And then from then, I was like, you know what? I actually kind of like making up stories more than writing speeches. And so I applied and got my MFA, and then for a brief stint worked as a literary agent, and then found my way to teaching at NYU.
Oh, that's amazing. Just a quick question on the speech writing thing, because I'm always curious about how that works behind the scenes. You know, as a kid, I used to think, well, Lincoln wrote the words and he did. And in those days, I think they probably did write a lot of the speeches, but these days there's so many cameras and so many speeches, there's a team. So I think you were with, maybe among others, John Podesta.
Correct.
Like, how does it work? Does he come and say, Grant, here are the key bullets, you know, thematically we need to hit, go write something beautiful, or is it more iterative than that?
You know, it was certainly more iterative than that. I worked with, there was another woman that I was speechwriting with, and we kind of divided and conquered, and it ended up kind of falling along issue areas about, you know, what I would write and what she would write. And we would read each other's drafts, and then there were various policy shops at the Center for American Progress that they would take a look at what we were writing. And so
you had to be steeped in the news, you had to know policy.
Totally.
And then would say it's a 5-minute speech or it's a 20-minute speech.
Exactly.
And you'd have to sort of gear to that.
Exactly. And it was fun because you kind of became like a mini expert on a topic, on whatever John happened to be speaking about for the time that you were working on the speech. When it got to him, it had gone through so many drafts and so many people had seen it, that it was certainly iterative.
How much lead time do you need for a speech?
It would be, you know, it would depend on how long the speech was. If it was like some big keynote address, we would have a little bit more lead time. But there were times where you're writing like introductions for someone that was coming to speak at the center that you would write like, I don't know, like I'd write like that morning. You know, you just kind of, those you can kind of like just crank out.
So the State of the Union, you know, a presidential one, how many people have their hands in a speech like that?
I ducked out of politics way before. You know, that was the funny thing, is that like one of the reasons that I think I pivoted into fiction was I really loved the narrative of speeches because they are narratives, right? And storytelling is such a powerful rhetorical tool. But I was like, when it came to like the politics of Washington, my like head just wasn't in the game. And so that was one of the main decisions that I had, or that made me kind of move over to fiction writing and apply to get my MFA.
It's interesting. I think you might be the first person on the show so far whose first writing career was in speech writing, as opposed to, you know, a lot of journalists and others. But
it was a weird
I suppose
way
you could make a whole career about politics. You know, I'm sure Jamie Dimon has a speechwriter. You know, he's out there so much.
There are so many people. I still get like kind of like LinkedIn, you know, automated generated emails sent to me about like, be a speechwriter at Google, or be a speechwriter for this executive at this company, which like, I think you can make like you can make a pretty good buck doing that.
I wonder if AI is starting to pinch that as well. You know, it's like write a speech about whatever, you know, all these kids are like, write a college essay about whatever, and out it comes. It's amazing.
I mean, it's pinching everything, right?
Yeah. So you leave DC to go to NYU.
Correct.
And there you take a course with Colson Whitehead?
I did.
What year was that?
It was, God, good question. This is like dating
before
me.
Or after? Must have been before Underground Railroad, I guess, because that was 2016.
It was before
right?
Underground Railroad. It was, I mean, well before. I want to say it was 2010 because it was my second year and I started in 2009. And it was a really funny class. I don't even know if he remembers it. So when you were getting your MFA, you had two kinds of classes. You had workshops, and then you had craft classes, which were really just sort of like reading and dissecting books.
published works or each other's? Okay.
Published works or short stories, and kind of figuring out how they work and talking about them. But for Colson, so I signed up with a craft class with Colson. But he decided that it was actually going to be a novella writing class, and kind of announced this on the first day that we were all going to be writing novellas, which were, a famously easy form to
sell. Then you hopped on Google and you're like, 40,000 words.
No, exactly. 40,000 words. And so everyone in the class wrote novella, and there was like really talented writers in the class. There, Julie Bunton was in that class, who wrote Marlena, and she has the new book coming out called Famous Men, which I'm so excited to read this summer. And I remember all of us like failed miserably. Like everyone's novella, and I think everyone would probably agree with me that was in that class, like we're just like total shit. And that I remember the last day of class, Colson was like, well, that didn't work. And he was the nicest guy and like a totally good teacher, but we were all like, yeah, that was just a failed experiment.
That's funny.
Yeah.
What is there anything in particular that you learned from Colson about technique or anything?
It's so long ago. What I remember most about the class was him being like, that was a failed experiment. There were other really incredible writers that I studied with. I studied with Junot Diaz, who was, and I had a workshop with him, and he was absolutely incredible in terms of teaching plot and the mechanisms of plot, and the necessity for characters making choices. And I remember him drawing these plot arcs on the board, and it was just like things suddenly made sense. He also had, and I will never forget this, the most perfectly cutting critique of one of my stories, where I turned in, I forget what the story was about, but there was a married couple in it that was kind of like on the rocks. And during the critique, everyone was like pretty nice. And then like Juno cleared his throat and said, I have met, and I will never forget this, I have met deflated Ziploc bags that have more sexual chemistry than this couple. It's like, okay.
Well, that's why you're a writer. That takes you there.
And it's like one of those things where it's like, God, I can't even be hurt by that because it's like such a good line. I was mostly just like writing that down. I was like, God, that's
going to use that.
Yeah.
So you were there 2009-10. Your debut novel was 2009. So you were published. You had a book out with SNS at the time you're taking these classes.
I did, which I tried to hide.
I was going to say that would put you in rare company, I would think, there.
I think I successfully hid it until I don't know, maybe the second year when people were like, wait a second, didn't you write something? And I was like, yeah, please don't read it. It's so bad.
Do you go back and read any of your old stuff?
No, I don't. It's a weird experience. I don't know if you feel like this, but it's a weird experience of like kind of having this interaction with your old self that you don't really recognize anymore. And you're able to see like all of your writerly anxieties on the page. And so I try not to. I try to, like, once it's out into the world, it's out into the world and it's out of my hands.
Yeah, I've been the same. I haven't really gone back to read anything. And also you've read it 800 times by the time it's on a shelf. You're like, I can't do it.
I mean, with So Old, So Young, I wrote, I think I wrote 11 drafts of it. And by this point, it's just like word salad. There'll be like days when I'm going to read a chapter of it and I'll pick it up and I'll be like, I don't even know if this is English. It's just like this weird combination of words.
So fast forwarding to 2017, People We Hate at the Wedding. Would you say, was that, I mean, I suppose the film came out about 5 years later. This seems to have broken through in some way for you career-wise?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's funny. Before, I don't know how many people know this, but before People We Hate at the Wedding, before I wrote that book, I had been working on another book for 4 years, and it was historical fiction, and it was this sort of book that I felt like, now that I had an MFA, like this was the book I was supposed to write, like this big, serious book. And I finished a draft of it and I sent it to my agent, and he came back to me with some notes, and I just couldn't look at it anymore, and I wanted to write something fun, and I wanted to write something that was more of my voice. And the summer that I started People Who Hated the Wedding. Earlier that summer, I'd gone to a wedding out in the Hamptons. And on the way back from the wedding on the LIRR, a friend of mine who was kind of traveling with my husband, he had like, I don't want to say stolen a bunch of wine from the wedding, but there was leftover wine from the wedding that just happened to be sitting there. And so we took it and we drank, there were 4 of us, and between the 4 of us, we drank 3 bottles of wine between Amagansett and Southampton. And so we were feeling good. And this friend of mine asked who we hated at the wedding. And in like my most brilliant move as a writer, I like drunkenly typed it into my phone. I was like, that would be a good title for a book.
It's a fun conversation to have.
It's a great conversation to have. And there were definitely people we hated at the wedding. But then the next morning I just started writing, and it started off just as like a break from this like big serious historical novel that I had been writing, just to clear my head. And then it just kind of like fell out of me. And like 9 months later I had written it. And my agent was like, what the fuck is this? And,
That's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, exactly. And now here we are. So,
that's great. Yeah. That's great. So were you teaching at that time? When did the NYU teaching start up?
So the NYU teaching started in the fall of 2012. So there was, again, about a year that I worked kind of doing editorial development at a literary agency, which was on the one hand, it was like an incredible learning experience. On the other hand, like to be a writer and to watch how the sausage gets made it's so demoralizing that I like didn't have the heart to continue doing both.
It'd be unpublished writers who are struggling to kind of get a deal, and you're trying to help them craft it to make it more saleable?
So there was that. But there were also like pretty established writers that we worked with, and I mostly worked on developing like narrative nonfiction proposals, which was actually super interesting and kind of like speechwriting, because as you were working on the proposal with the writer, if it's a historian or someone, you become an expert on whatever they're writing about. And, I remember I worked on this one proposal that was about kind of like the making of Monte Carlo and into what it is today. And I like became this like mini expert on like the making of Monte Carlo. And it was so fun. I was like a blast at cocktail parties. I had so many facts. But again, it just like, and I think also to be a good agent, there are agents that are also writers, and I don't know how they do it, because I think to be a good agent, you also have to like really commit yourself to supporting the career of your writers.
Yeah. So then that was a brief stay there, and then you start teaching and writing. Right now, those are your sort of 2 occupations?
That's it, teaching and writing.
And how do you structure your classes? Like, what is the grant class at NYU?
Oh gosh. So in the fall, I teach like a freshman expository writing class that like all freshmen have to take. And they write over the course of the semester like 3 essays. And then in the spring, I teach a slightly more advanced class where they write 2 essays. And so the semester kind of divides itself into these blocks. Man, I don't know. I feel like talk about imposter syndrome. Like that's when I feel like the biggest imposter is when I'm teaching people how to write essays. Like I've maybe in the last decade written 3 essays. Like I don't know the thing about it, And so like I get up there and I'm like teaching them, this is how you write a good introduction. I don't know how to write a good introduction. When I sit down to write an essay, I'm like, fuck, this is hard, So I have a lot of empathy for my students. But it's a fun gig.
It's funny. Lee Child had a funny line on this, like, when people say, how do you write, because every year for a time there, he was cranking out another Reacher novel in September. People are like, well, how do you write a novel? He's like, I can't tell you I only know how to write the novel I'm writing right now. Like beyond that, I couldn't give you a clue.
Totally. That makes total sense. And, I feel the same way about writing novels now, is that you only know the novel that you're writing. But beyond that, like I feel I've only been writing novels for so long in terms of my own work that I tried the other day to sit down and like start a short story, and I'm like, how do people do this? I'm less scared by writing 120,000 words than I am by writing 8,000 words.
Yeah. I feel the same about a speech. I don't know how I could sit down and, all right, how is this person going to communicate in 5 or 20 minutes the message? Like that would be a lot of pressure to.
I don't know if I could do it now. I really don't,
right.
I've just been writing novels for so long.
Well, let's talk about your process for writing the novels then. Do you outline, or just rip into it?
I want to say that I write like super extensive outlines and I'm like such a planner, but as I said before, like I'm terrible at logistics. And so I don't tend to have very extensive outlines. That said, I usually need to have like an image or a scene that is going to end the novel or going to be near the end of the novel to know where I'm headed. And that will like necessarily change over the course of writing and revising and everything else. But if I don't have that, it's disaster, like total disaster. I forget who said, I think it was Yale Doctor who said like writing is like you can I'm gonna like butcher the quote, but it's like driving in the dark and you can only see what your headlights have illuminated in front of you. Like I can't write like that. Like I need to at least like have Google Maps a little, not showing me the whole route, but like
some
showing
kind of
me
North Star out there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you do character sketches?
When I start off, no, and then I usually write myself into a corner where I realize like I don't actually know these people and I have to figure them out. And at that point, I'll stop. And I like my process, by the way, I would not recommend to anyone. Like it's so much trial and error. But I'll usually like write myself into a corner and be like, I actually don't know what these people want. And at that point, I'll stop, think about them for a bit, usually do some notes, and, and like separate docs.
With all the trial and error, has your process evolved since your debut? Like, this technique kind of works for me. I'm going to do more of that.
It's funny. I think it's like, this is going to sound counterintuitive. It's like evolved in its devolution. I actually think the problem with the first book is that I like did outline it and was like so like adherent to that outline that there was no room for any creative tangents. There was no room for the characters to become more complicated, to like make unpredictable decisions. And so it got me into a corner. And so I try to allow there to be, my chaos. If I'm being kind to myself, my chaos, I think, is me evolving as a writer.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. A lot of people, of the people who've been on the show, which is more than 100 now, it's almost evenly split between really dedicated outliners who then, and everyone has flexibility for adjusting, and they'll do a second draft of their outline, that sort of thing. Amor Tolles is a huge outlining.
Right. Who else is an outliner?
Oh my gosh. Amor I know is hardcore on the outlining. Who else was big?
He strikes me as an outliner.
Yeah, he's pretty well planned out.
His stuff is so precise and so clean that it really strikes me as an outliner.
And then like Lee, for example, Lee Child's the other way. He's like, I think there's more intensity on the page if even I don't know what's happening next.
And I've got
to sort of figure it out.
That's fascinating because those things are such plot boilers. You'd think like they would have like really structured outlines.
But he just sort of, he gets Reacher in and out of trouble and,
That's amazing. That is awesome.
How about, we were just talking about typing versus writing by hand before we got going. How about that? Do you type in on a keyboard? And...
I type in like a Word doc. I think it's like you were saying earlier, that there is the thing between sort of the mind-hand connection. And if you write by hand, right, it like does something with your brain. And I totally believe that. My problem is I can't read my writing. And so if I wrote by hand, it would take me so long to like decipher what I had actually written that a book would take me like 3 years longer than it typically does.
How about editing? Do you edit as you go, sort of end of day, or do you just keep going to the finish line and then come back and do a big edit?
So what I typically do is and I think that this is like an effect of speech writing. Like I like treat writing in terms of the hours like a job. Like I'm not one of those people that like writes at 3 o'clock in the morning or any of that. I like wake up, I walk my disaster of a dog, and then I'm usually at my desk by like 8:30, and I'll write like 8:30. I don't know, say like 8:30 to noon. I try to aim for 1,000 words. And then after 1,000 words, I'll take a break, like go to the gym, have lunch, whatever. And then in the afternoon, if the writing's going really well and I'm like feeling it, then I'll keep going. But I typically in the afternoon will edit what I wrote in the morning.
That same day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then give yourself a leaving off point to pick up at 8:30 the next morning.
Totally. And usually what I'll do to kind of get me into the writing the next morning is do another round of edits on what I wrote the day before. And that kind of, in tinkering, I just kind of end up like I just keep writing.
How early in the process do you let your either agent or editor have a peek at things?
That's a good question. I typically, when I just started working on a new project and I sent maybe, once I had like 40 pages done, I sent it to my agent. And that was mostly because 2 books, before So Old, So Young, I was working on another book that was one of those books that was like a great idea after 2 glasses of wine. And then like you start writing and you're like, actually, that's not a great idea. But I got really far into it, like maybe like 150, 175 pages, and sent those off to my agent. And he was like, turns out it's not a good idea. And after that, I think I have like PTSD from that I was like, I'm going to give you these 40 pages just to get your read. And then,
did you have a strong feeling the other way? Like, no, I can make this work. It's going to be great.
No, I knew he was right.
Yeah. Okay.
I knew he was right.
Because it's hard to just cut bait on something you spent that much time on.
You like have to, you know? This one, it just like wasn't working and I could feel it wasn't working. So
how many times have you had to bottom drawer something like that?
3.
Yeah.
3.
All since your debut?
All since my debut. So the historical one that I mentioned before, People Who Hated the Wedding, there was another one after that somewhere. And then this one right before So Old, So Young. It's again, like a terrible process. Like I usually have to like get the bad idea out of my system before I land on the good idea, right? I have to like, even if people tell me it's a bad idea, I have to prove to myself that it's a bad idea. And then I can go write the good idea.
Yeah. Last question on process. How about early readers? Husband, agent, other friends from
agent. I have like 2 really good friends who are big readers, and one of them is a writer. And I'll send it to them. And then I'm in actually a writing group with 2 other writers, Jennifer Close and Mary Laura Philpott, who are both incredible. Jennifer's a novelist, and Mary Laura's an essayist and memoirist. And then my husband, who is like my harshest reader. And my husband does this. I mean, I hope he doesn't listen to this. He probably will though. He does this. He's a great reader, but he's the sort of reader where whatever book he's reading, and he reads a ton. Like he'll say, "Have you thought of making your book more like Jonathan Franzen's book?" And you're like, yeah, like every day of my life, but I'm not Jonathan Franzen, right? Like, have you thought about making your book, more like not Kanoskar's book? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, all the time, but like, I'm trying, but I'm not a genius. And so so those, I have to take like some of his edits with a grain of salt.
That's funny. I love that. My wife is my harshest critic. So there'll be like a big red X over a page, like boring. You're losing me here,
that, right?
You have to, better to hear it from your spouse than from the New York Times.
Absolutely. You need that.
Yeah. If you're lucky to hear from the New York Times, I guess, right? Almost always good to hear from them in some capacity, I guess. But So Old, So Young. So this is the new book. It is terrific. I was laughing out loud, but I was moved. It's like, it's full of wisdom. By the way, you have to do like the next 20 years to like, so I have a good sense of like what's coming down the pike because it just totally captures that sort of like college to 45 year old range. And I don't, some people find making comparisons annoying. I hope you don't, but please, reminding me of like The Big Chill.
Sure.
Like a modern day Big Chill.
Sure.
Good.
I'm really honored by that. And I'm going to blow your mind by saying I've never seen The Big Chill.
I think it came out like the year of your birth. It was like 83. I had to look up. When did that movie come out after I read your book? But I think it was an 83 movie.
It's one of those things that like, it doesn't feel like it's for me. Like it feels like it belongs to this other generation. I will say though that its soundtrack is forever seared into my brain because my parents on long car trips would play it, like the cassette tape of the soundtrack on repeat. like looping on long car trips. And so I will never forget the soundtrack for it. It's a great soundtrack.
You've got it, like, now that we've had this conversation, you've got to go watch
I know.
Jeff Goldblum, who, by the way, almost looks the same, like more than 40 years later. He's like still more relevant as an actor than ever.
Close. I mean, like the cast
Kevin
is incredible.
Kline.
Yeah. I got to watch it. I have to watch it. But I'm like almost, because of the comparisons to this book, I'm almost now like afraid to watch it.
I can't be the first person to raise the big chill.
No, and you're not. You're not. Everyone's like, how many times have you seen The Big Chill? Or where were you the first time you saw The Big Chill? And I'm like, spoiler alert, I have never seen The Big Chill.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it reminded me of that. So take us through a bit of the, we've got Marco and Mia and Sasha, Richie, Adam.
Yeah. So it's about these, it's about 6 friends, and it follows them over the course of 20 years. And the kind of the structural twist to it is that you drop in on them at 5 parties over the course of those 20 years. So you kind of catch up with them in these brief bursts as they're stumbling to adulthood. And the parties kind of mark the various stages in life, from, like a shitty apartment party in their 20s to a destination wedding that kind of goes awry, to a 35th birthday party in the Hamptons, to like a backyard, barbecue in New Jersey, which was super fun to write. And then a funeral was the kind of the last, I don't want to say party, but last kind of event. And yeah, it's these friends that you see how time and choices kind of press down on their relationships and strain those bonds that they thought, I think, were unbreakable in their 20s.
It is great. I having lived those years myself and it's, you can see parallels. Anyone reading this book will see this sort of how it tracks. It's I know you draw off your own experiences in some ways with your DC book, with this book, you went to pen yourself, but. Yeah,
for sure. This book, it's funny. I wrote it because and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I want to say like that my late 30s, I started having this experience where I would wake up in the middle of the night and literally like not know where I was. And I don't mean that in like a writerly way. I don't mean that in some like metaphoric way. Like I like literally I would look around and be like, how am I fucking 40 years old? Like, how am I married? How do I have a 401k? How do I have a mortgage? How do I don't remember being given all these responsibilities. I feel like I'm now inhabiting the body of some adult, and I was supposed to stay 22 forever. Right. And so that realization, which is so funny because age is the most inevitable thing in the world, right? And yet, as people, we can send someone into the fucking moon and we can understand quantum physics, but it's always a surprise when you are the one who gets old. That wasn't supposed to happen.
I wasn't supposed to get,
you know what I mean? And so and so that experience I wanted to explore and the ways in which relationships change as people grapple with that very universal, but also weirdly super idiosyncratic experience, because I feel like that the realization that you're no longer young comes at different stages for different people.
Yeah.
And so that led to the book that's on your desk right there.
Yeah. I mean, that process is, as you say, it comes with different traumas at different times for different people, which is why I'm always amazed when people get married in their early 20s, which used to be a fairly common thing. How do you're such a different person by the time you're in your 40s? How does a marriage survive that?
Yeah, well, I think often it doesn't, right?
As we see,
Yeah.
By the way, do you ever get contacted, either, your book that was set around DC interns,
sure,
or this one, which picks up a bunch of UPenn alums and try. Did you ever get a phone Grant, I don't appreciate being, so transparently portrayed in your novel. I'm upset about that. Have you ever gotten a call like that from someone?
I remember the DC one. I did get that phone call from one person. And it's someone who I actually quite like. And so a friend of mine from Penn, actually.
Now, were they onto something, or that you did not do that?
There were. I will say they were half onto something. Is that there were very funny details about their job that I won't get into, but that I I had to use because the details were so funny. But I gave those details to a sort of like spiteful character, and the spiteful character was not
it was not a one-for-one.
No,
person
absolutely
to character.
not, absolutely not. But the jobs, and I was like naive and dumb about this kind of stuff. But the job details were like so specific that there was no way that she was going to be like, oh, he's just basing this on, this isn't based on me. With this one, there aren't any characters that are based on anyone. They're the characters.
That may not matter, though. I mean, Old, So Young comes out, we'll see if you start getting.
Well, it's really funny. Like
update this week, right?
Yeah. February 17th.
Feb 17th. Okay.
It's really funny because as a fiction writer, you'll write a character, and that will have traits of someone, and that person will never pick up on the fact that character is sort of based on them. But then like some other random person will come up to you and be like, you totally based that character on me. And you're like, yeah, sure, bud. Like, absolutely. Like,
it's like they're all looking at a funhouse mirror or something.
That's exactly what it is. And it's a weird like psychological experiment with the people who see themselves in things that like aren't actually there. But in this one, they're amalgamations of people. They're, certainly parts of me are in every character, like my own, specific neuroses, kind of like spread out across the various characters. But in this one, there are no kind of one-to-one links, but I'm sure I will get phone calls and I'll let you know when I do.
Okay. Nelson DeMille, who was a friend, he passed. He was a great guy, but he wrote a book called The Gold Coast. Yeah. Set in Long Island. He said, I wish I had a nickel for everyone who thought they were a character in one of my books.
Totally. Well, my, this one, she won't have the opportunity to, but my mother likes to be like, oh, I see, and so we'll see what she does with this one.
Well, good luck with it. It's an amazing book.
Thank you so much.
It's a fun, but, really, as I said, like a fun but moving and
Thank you.
Literary but great book.
Thanks. That means a lot to me.
What's before we get into the lightning round? What's next? Could this be a movie? Any interest from?
I don't know. I mean,
film?
To your lips to God's ears. I'm a little biased. I think it would make for a good limited series. But we'll see what happens.
Cool.
See what happens.
How about separate from the book? How about for you? Your dialogue writing is so amazing. Have you ever thought about doing screenwriting yourself?
I have thought about it. And it's something that I would love to pursue at some point. It's funny though. And it kind of goes what we were talking about earlier, where it's like novels are the only thing my brain knows how to do anymore, because I'll think of an idea and I'll be like, that would be a great screenplay, or like that would be a great play. Like that would be, like it would be great as another form. And I'll think about it for a while and like kind of toss it around in my head. And then through that process, it will become like novelized. And I'll be like, well, no, I actually just have to write that novel. And so like, I have to like find the moment when that happens in my brain and like stop it so I can start diversifying the things that I'm writing. But no, I would love to kind of explore that genre of writing.
I'm always fascinated by it too. Sometime I want to just sort of like, audit a writer's room somewhere just to see it all happen.
Totally. I mean, like when they were turning People We Hate at the Wedding into a movie, I like didn't adapt that. I wasn't involved in it. But the team behind it was wonderful. And they went out of their way to kind of keep me in the loop in ways that they didn't have to do. And they would send me drafts of the script. And it was like fascinating to read a script. And it made me realize like, oh, I like know nothing about this. But what really turned me on to screenwriting and like wanting to do it was like, I fucking hate describing things when like in a book. If like describing a house, for example, I just want to be like, it's a house. Like,
are you kidding me? All right. So I object. I object to that statement because I actually dog-eared a page when this is for readers who get this book, which you must. On 155, you open a chapter and you describe the Hamptons house that they got him here. And I'm like, it 100% took me there. It was like one of the best sort of scene-setting house descriptions I've read.
Do you know how long that description took me to write? Like, that was like 2 days work. I hate doing it. And so when I was reading the screenplay for People We Hate at the Wedding, and it was just like, exterior, a house. And I was like, what a dream.
That's so great.
What a dream. You're just like,
kitchen day.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like-
kitchen day. You're like, I'm done. Like that. So
That's funny. Dennis Lehane was joking one time, who, by the way, is one of the few people who's done really well at both novel writing and TV writing. But he's like, as the show production budget is draining, there's a lot of kitchen day. Like, it's just like, you can't do like Central Park and stuff happening. It's like, we have no money for any of that. It's kitchen day.
One location. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, I'd love to see you do that. Did you, when you were reading the drafts of the screenplay or of the movie with Allison, Janney and whatnot, did you ever have the reaction of either that's brilliant, I hadn't thought about that, or gosh, that's totally off and they would never say that, or
no, because the two women who adapted, Wendy and Lizzie Molyneux, they're brilliant and they're so funny, and they made great choices. I mean, the movie was in many ways different from the book, but when I was like reading the script, I was like, oh, that's why they made that choice. Like, it just works so much better as a movie if they do this than like it works in a book, right? They're two totally different art forms that you have to cut stuff, you have to change stuff. And so I think I went into it more interested in the choices they were making than defensive about them, because also like I don't know the fucking thing about like making a movie, and so I don't know if it's because I have just like total lack of confidence myself, but I'm like, sure, you know more than I do, go right ahead.
Well, it's great that you had a front row seat to that one. I would love to see you try it. Your writing is terrific, and
one of these days I'm gonna give it a shot.
All right, well, on to the lightning round then.
All right, let's do it.
First question, your favorite book as a kid?
Easy. Where the Red Fern Grows. It was the first book to totally destroy me.
Who wrote that? I'm trying to.
Is it Wilson Rawls? Something Rawls? I think Wilson Rawls.
I know. What's it about? I know I've like.
It's two dogs that die, and a red fern grows where they're both buried.
Oh God, I don't know if I can take that.
Yeah, it is. I was given it as a gift in the 4th grade, and I remember reading it, amazed that a book could make me feel the way that the book felt.
When did you first? So this is a question I should have asked like way earlier. But when did you first think you either could be or wanted to be a writer? Was it as late as the speech writing, or long before?
Oh, no. Well before that.
Yeah.
Well before that. Like I said, my parents are wonderful. I'm super lucky in that they always encouraged reading, and books were always around. Our house was filled with books. They wanted my brother and I to read, and we did. And I loved it. And then it was probably around like the 4th grade where I was like, I remember I wrote stories. We had this thing when I was in elementary school called the Invention Convention, where you had to invent something and you could have the option of inventing something or writing a story. And I always wrote a story. Yeah. Always. I was like one of 2 kids that always, like the 2 weirdos who like wrote the story, right? Like that was me.
That's great. So close to Where the Red Fern Grows, set you on the track. How about book or books you're reading now? 3
of them. I am totally obsessed. I think I mentioned this earlier with Solveig Bali's On the Calculation of Volume, which is about one woman stuck in November 18th. There's been 3 of them published. It's in translation, I believe, from Danish, and there have been 3 of them have been published, and the 4th one is coming out this year. And
November 18th of multiple years, or one particular?
Of 1 year. I mean, she is stuck. It's like Groundhog Day. She's like stuck in this same day. And yet it is like as gripping as like the best mystery. And I like can't stop thinking about them. My husband and I just got back from Japan 2 days ago. I'm like, I don't even know what day it is. I could be stuck in November 18th. And I like read the entire second one in one sitting on a train. They're enthralling. So that's the first one. The second one is a debut novel by a woman named Alex Caddis that is coming out in March, I believe, and the novel is called Big Nobody. And I don't say this lightly. It is the funniest book I've ever read. It is, the voice of the character is, the voice of the narrator is this like adolescent girl who lives with her domineering father. And it's like it's up there with the great adolescent narrators. And then I'm listening to Jill Lepore's We the People because I think she's brilliant, and also because her voice for me is like ASMR. It like makes me feel like everything's going to be okay. It's like I like listening to her.
So do you always have multiple going?
It's funny. I used to know, like I used to be like a one book kind of guy, and I would like really get into the book. But lately, I've been kind of reading, like multiple books, and usually I listen to nonfiction, and so I'm usually listening to a book as well.
Okay. And will you read a book when you're drafting, when you're doing a first draft of your own writing?
Yeah, I will. I have to be careful. Like I'll usually read books that kind of show me how to do something craft-wise or structurally, but I can't read too many of them because then I start like getting frustrated that I'm not doing it as well as these writers did. And so I have to like,
you're too modest.
I have to like step away and read something totally different.
Yeah. All right. So here are a couple questions that sort of go to the themes of So Old, So Young. I suppose in your estimation, the percent of 45-year-old-ish Americans whose best friend in college is still their best friend.
So I'm going to add a caveat to this and say, I think that if a friendship, like a college friendship, can survive your early 30s, it's going to last. And I'm going to put that number at like, let's say 32%. Because like early 30s is when like people get married. People start having kids, right? Like that's when like relationships really start changing, and like you're not the people you were in your 20s anymore. And so if you can get through that period, then I think you're good.
All right. And then the Harry Met Sally question, the percent of Americans whose best friend is the opposite sex.
Okay. So like I am a diehard When Harry Met Sally fan. Like I could do the entire movie right now if you wanted me to. I won't, don't worry. And so like the like Nora Ephron worshiper in me wants to say, I want to, and like the Rob Reiner worshiper in me wants to be like, well, zero, like men and women can't be friends, right? I think that
we've established that long ago. Billy Crystal said it.
Exactly. Well, Harry Albright said we can't. So but come on, they end up sleeping together and they end up getting together. Clearly, they can't be friends, right? I would like to believe that we've grown a little bit as a society, and so I'm going to say like 15 to 20%.
All right.
Yeah.
I
say that as someone who's like best friend is a woman. I'm a gay man, so it's like a little different, right? But she's a lesbian, so it's like really different. But like,
it's like the counter
right.
or whatever.
I don't know how that works out, but like, but I'm gonna say like 15 to 20%.
All right, good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, I actually didn't take the time to answer my own question. I think,
what do you think?
I would say probably lower, but greater than zero. I mean, it's I
was going to say, do you think it's like greater than zero?
Yeah, like 5 maybe.
Well, what about the last question? How many people do you think, this is like moving away from lightning round now, but like, what do you think about college friends?
Of best friend, I would say I would probably take it's almost like similar to the marriage topic that we had earlier. Like, I would say the under though, because you leave college, you go to different cities, you start families, careers. There are so many different forks in the road that take you in wildly different directions. Yeah. Like friend, yes. Best friend, like that's tougher.
Right.
So I would closer to 18.
Okay. All right. I'll take it. Very specific, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Let's see. Best piece of writing advice that you've ever gotten.
Oh, that's good. Just keep typing. Yeah.
That's great. Who gave you that advice?
My agent.
Good thing you're still with this agent.
No kidding. Writing this book, like I said, I wrote 11 drafts of it. I almost lost my mind around draft 7. And I remember I called him and I was like, I don't know if I'm talented enough to pull this one off. And his response was, well, we'll see. And just keep typing.
That's great. God, that reminds me of this advice I got years ago before I'd published anything. But I had the idea I just finished reading The Gold Coast by Nelson DeMille, which I love.
Mentioned,
I finished thinking I want to make people feel the way this book made me feel, and so I had this idea for a book, and we were at this benefit, and I was sitting next to Brian Russell, who's a songwriter, who's married to Cheryl Ladd of Charlie's Angels.
Yes.
I don't know if you know any. Yeah, so
yes,
you know,
sure, of course. Yeah.
So Brian Russell had written a bunch of songs, and he and I we'd had many cocktails, right? And by this point, we're over by the bar, and he's drinking a gin and tonic, and he's had a bunch, and so have I. And I tell him this thing, and like, I have an idea for this book, and I'm going on about it, and he goes, just start writing.
Yeah.
And he pounds his gin and tonic and walks off. And it was like the simplest advice ever.
But it's literally, yeah.
But I stood there like in stunned, like a bell. I'm like, yes, he's right. Like it is as simple as that. You know, it meant nothing to him. Like it was a huge moment for me. He was like off for another gin and tonic somewhere else. But
it's so true. Yeah. That's like, what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Last question for Grant Ginder. One piece of advice for the audience.
Oh man. Is this like writing advice?
It could be on anything you choose.
Oh my God, anything. Well, I mean, I am famous for making just terrible decisions, and so I don't know if I'm the best person to ask the question. I'll give writing advice though, in case like I assume that there are people interested in writing craft that are listening to this. I think my piece of writing advice is that inspiration, like with a capital I, is a fucking hoax. And what you got to do is and this is kind of like the just write it advice, right? You got to sit down and you got to write one shitty sentence, and then the next sentence, which is going to be a little less shitty, and then the next sentence, which is going to be a little less shitty. And then eventually, after you write enough of those shitty sentences, you're going to start writing good sentences. Mm-hmm. And that is much more important than like waiting for some, fictional lightning bolt to like strike you with a great book idea.
That's great. Great. Don't be afraid to write a bad sentence.
Yeah,
just get out there and get going.
Yeah. Just write it. Just write it.
Okay.
Right?
I loved the Negroni.
Yes.
Great to see you.
Really good to see you.
Congrats
Thanks for
on the
having
book.
me. Thank you so much.